I want you to think about something for a moment. Picture two people, same job, same salary, same city. One of them retires at 58, never worries about money again, and quietly leaves his children more than most people earn in a lifetime. The other one works until 71, takes out a reverse mortgage on the house he spent 30 years paying off, and still lies awake at night doing math that never seems to add up. Same income, different outcome. I spent years inside financial institutions, watching people's money or watching them run out of it. And the single most important thing I observed had nothing to do with salary, inheritance, or market timing. It had everything to do with whether someone understood three specific points in the wealth building process where the rules of money quietly change beneath your feet. Most people have no idea these moments exist. They're grinding away, saving a little here, investing a little there, and wondering why it feels like they're walking on a treadmill that never actually gets them anywhere. What they don't realize is that the math governing their money is about to shift in a way that rewards patience more generously than almost anything else in finance. My name is Jonathan. I spent the better part of my career inside the banking world, watching how wealth actually accumulates. Not how it's advertised to accumulate, but how it actually works for real people with real salaries and real lives. And what I'm about to share with you is something I wish someone had explained clearly to me on day one. There are three net worth milestones: $100,000, $500,000, and $1 million, where your wealth building fundamentally changes gears. Not gradually, not slowly, but genuinely shifts into a different mode altogether. And if you understand what's actually happening at each of these thresholds, you will make better decisions with your money for the rest of your life. If this kind of clear, grounded perspective on money is useful to you, subscribe. No noise, no hype, just things worth knowing. Now let's get into it. Before we talk numbers, I want to address something that keeps a lot of people stuck before they even get started. Most people think about wealth in a straight line. You have $0, you need $1 million, so you need to save $1 million. That's the mental model most people are operating on, and it's precisely why the process feels so discouraging in the early years. The reality is that money, when it's invested and left alone, does not grow in a straight line. It grows on a curve, slowly at first, almost frustratingly slowly, and then with an acceleration that feels almost unfair once you're on the receiving end of it. I've seen this pattern play out hundreds of times across thousands of accounts, and every single time, the people who stayed consistent through the slow early years eventually arrived at a place where the math was working so hard in their favor that they barely had to do anything at all. The people who quit during those early years never got to experience that, and they almost always quit right before the curve started bending upward. That's the core of what we're talking about today. 3 points on that curve where the bend becomes undeniable, where you can actually feel the shift happening in your account. Let me walk you through each one. The first milestone is $100,000, and I want to spend a little time here because this one is the most important, not because of the math it produces, but because of the discipline it proves. Let's use a grounded example. You're putting away $400 a month consistently. You're invested in a diversified portfolio earning an average of 7% annually. That's not an aggressive assumption. That's a measured, realistic, long-term figure for a reasonable investment strategy. At that pace, getting to $100,000 takes roughly 8 to 9 years. Now I know that sounds like a long time, but before you let that discourage you, I want you to understand what is happening during those 8 or 9 years, because it is not what most people think. In year 1, your returns on investment might generate a few $100s, barely noticeable next to your monthly contributions. In year 3, maybe your portfolio throws off a couple $1,000s in growth. Still modest, still feels like your own savings are doing most of the work, and they are. In these early years, you are the engine. Your contributions are the primary driver of growth, but something is building underneath the surface. Every dollar that earns a return gets reinvested. That reinvested dollar starts earning its own return, and those new returns generate their own returns in turn. It's not dramatic in year 1, it's not dramatic in year 3, but by year 7, year 8, you start to notice something. The returns are no longer just a rounding error. They're becoming a meaningful contributor to your monthly balance growth. By the time you cross $100,000, roughly $44,000 to $46,000 of that balance came from investment growth, not from your contributions, from growth. That's nearly half. In 8 or 9 years, you have essentially grown a second savings stream that required no additional work from you whatsoever. Here's what I want you to understand about this milestone. $100,000 is not impressive because of what it generates right now. It is impressive because of what it now has the capacity to become. A $100,000 portfolio at 7% generates approximately $7,000 per year in returns. That's roughly $580 per month added to your account without you lifting a finger, and that $580 gets reinvested, and it starts earning, and it compounds. The reason so many people abandon this process before reaching $100,000 is that they judge the early years by the same standard they should only use for the later years. They look at modest early returns and conclude the whole thing isn't working. What they're actually witnessing is a foundation being laid, quietly, patiently, correctly. Charlie Munger once said, "The first $100,000 is a bit H." I'll keep this channel family friendly, but the sentiment is precisely right. It is the hardest earned milestone in the entire wealth building journey, because at this stage, you are building mostly on willpower and discipline rather than momentum. But once you have it, everything changes. Slowly at first. Then suddenly. Something I observed repeatedly working in finance is how differently people treated $100,000 depending on whether they understood what it actually represented. Some people hit that number and started feeling comfortable. Maybe they loosened up on contributions. Maybe they rewarded themselves with a lifestyle upgrade. In a few cases, they stopped investing altogether for a period of time, feeling like the hard work was done. What they didn't realize is that they had just built a machine and then turned it off right before it was about to start running at full capacity. The people who kept feeding that machine, who maintained their contributions and let compound interest do its job. Those are the ones who arrived at the second milestone in a fraction of the time they expected. The second milestone I want to focus on is $500,000. Now, using our same scenario, $400 per month, 7% average annual return. Starting from zero, reaching $500,000 takes approximately 31 to 32 years. But here is the thing that changes the entire picture. You didn't start from zero at year 31. You had $100,000 working for you from around year 9. That means 22 additional years of compounding on an ever-growing base. By the time you reach $500,000, your own cumulative contributions over those 31 years total roughly $150,000 to $155,000. The remaining $345,000. That's compound interest. That's your money's money. That's decades of returns earning their own returns. Let that sit for a moment. You contributed $155,000 of your own money. Your portfolio is worth $500,000. The difference, $345,000, was generated entirely by the math, not by your labor. And the pace at this stage is genuinely remarkable. Your portfolio at $500,000 earning 7% generates approximately $35,000 per year in returns. That's nearly $3,000 per month in growth from returns alone. And you haven't touched your monthly $400 contribution yet. The investment engine is now outperforming your contributions by a factor of more than 7 to 1. But what makes $500,000 truly significant isn't just the growth rate, it's what it means from a security standpoint. A $500,000 portfolio invested at even a modest return rate of 6% generates $30,000 per year in passive income. That won't replace a full working salary for most people, but it fundamentally changes what a job loss means. It changes what a health crisis means. It changes your negotiating power at work because you can afford to walk away from situations that don't serve you. You're not desperate. And when you're not desperate, you make better decisions in your career, in your relationships, in your financial life. I've seen this shift happen in real time. People who reach meaningful investment balances carry themselves differently. Not because they're showing off, because they're not operating from fear anymore. That changes everything. There's also a more technical reason why $500,000 is a meaningful milestone, and it has to do with what's called the withdrawal rate. Financial planning research, the most widely referenced being the so-called 4% rule, suggests that a portfolio can sustain indefinite withdrawals of 4% annually without depleting the principal over a 30-year period, assuming diversified investment and typical market conditions. 4% of $500,000 is $20,000 per year. $1,666 per month. That's not a fortune, but combined with other income sources, a part-time role, Social Security down the road, a spouse's income, a side business, it starts to look like real financial independence is within reach. And if you're willing to stay at 3% withdrawals, you're essentially living off the interest while your principal continues to grow. The machine keeps running. There's something I want to address here that doesn't show up on any spreadsheet, but matters enormously. When I was working directly with clients over the years, I noticed a consistent pattern around the $500,000 to $700,000 range. People started talking differently about money, not more arrogantly, actually almost the opposite, quieter, more patient, less reactive to short-term market noise. The reason is straightforward. When you have substantial assets, a 10% market correction is painful in dollar terms. Your account might drop $50,000, but it's not existential. You don't panic sell. You don't lie awake convinced everything is falling apart. You've seen enough cycles to trust the process. That patience is incredibly valuable because the single most destructive behavior in investing is panic selling during downturns. The people who experience that behavior most severely are almost always the people who don't yet have enough of a cushion to stay calm. Building toward $500,000 isn't just building a number. You're building the psychological foundation that allows you to benefit from market volatility rather than be harmed by it. The third milestone is $1 million, and I'll be direct about something. In terms of pure lifestyle, $1 million today is not what it was 25 years ago. Inflation is real. $1 million portfolio is not a guaranteed ticket to a life of luxury, but as a financial milestone, in terms of what it means for your investment mathematics, it is still transformative. Continuing our same scenario, $400 a month, 7% average return. Reaching $1 million happens around year 41 to 42. Over those 42 years, your cumulative contributions total approximately $200,000 to $205,000. Your portfolio is worth $1 million. The gap, roughly $795,000, was built entirely by compound growth. Nearly 80 cents of every dollar in that portfolio came from returns on returns, not from your own money. Read that again. You saved around $200,000 of your own money over 4 decades. The investment process turned that into $1 million. The leverage that mathematics provides over time is genuinely extraordinary. At $1 million earning 7%, your portfolio generates roughly $70,000 per year in returns. That's $5,800 per month without any new contributions. Your money is now doing more work in a single month than most full-time employees do in several months of labor. And here's the number that I find most compelling. At the 4% withdrawal rate I mentioned earlier, a $1 million portfolio can sustain $40,000 per year indefinitely. If your Social Security income adds another $18,000 to $22,000 annually, which is roughly the current average benefit, you're looking at $58,000 to $62,000 per year in relatively stable income. For a person or couple with modest expenses and a paid-off home, that is a genuinely comfortable retirement by almost any measure. The $1 million milestone also changes your relationship with risk in a final, important way. At this level, you can afford to take more calculated risks with a portion of your portfolio, things you would never have considered when you were building from zero. A meaningful allocation toward a specific sector you believe in, a small position in a business you want to support, charitable giving that has real impact. The options available to you expand considerably when you have a substantial base of assets that isn't going anywhere. But here's what I've watched happen to people who don't understand the third milestone correctly. They get to $1 million and they stop. They feel like they have arrived. The discipline that built the wealth quietly fades, contributions stop. Withdrawals begin earlier than they should. Lifestyle expands to fill the available resources, and the math, which had been working so furiously in their favor, slows down or reverses. The people who truly benefit from reaching $1 million are the ones who understand that it's not the destination. It's the point at which the compound interest engine is running at its most powerful. The acceleration from $1 million to $2 million can happen in 8 to 10 years with no additional contributions at all, depending on market conditions. The jump from $2 million to $4 million can follow in another decade. This is why the very wealthy get wealthier at what feels like an unfair rate. It's not because the game's rigged, though there are certainly structural advantages at higher wealth levels. It's because the math genuinely becomes more favorable the longer it's allowed to run uninterrupted. I want to bring this back to something concrete before we close, because I'm aware that abstract mathematics, while important to understand, doesn't always translate cleanly into daily decisions. The single most actionable thing I can offer you is this. The milestone that matters most is the first one, $100,000. And it's the one you build almost entirely through behavior rather than math. Getting to $100,000 requires consistency when the returns don't feel exciting. It requires staying invested when markets drop and everything in your gut tells you to do something. It requires resisting the temptation to delay starting until the right moment arrives. Because in 3 decades of watching people's finances, I never once saw the right moment arrive for someone who was waiting for it. Start with what you have. Increase contributions when you can. Don't touch it. Let the math run. A few things worth understanding as you build. Tax advantage accounts, your 401k, your IRA are not optional tools for serious wealth building. They are essential. The difference between a dollar compounding inside a tax-advantaged account versus outside one over 30 years is substantial. Use every dollar of employer match available to you before putting a single additional cent anywhere else. That match is an immediate 50 to 100% return on your contribution. Nothing else in investing comes close to that. Diversification matters, especially in the early years when a major loss can set you back significantly. As your portfolio grows, your cushion against volatility grows with it. But when you're building toward that first $100,000, a concentrated bet that goes wrong doesn't just hurt your balance. It can destroy the psychological momentum that's keeping you consistent. And finally, be skeptical of complexity. The financial industry profits from convincing you that sophisticated strategies and frequent activity are how wealth is built. In almost every case I observed, the people who built the most durable wealth did the simplest things consistently for the longest periods of time. So let me leave you with the 3 milestones clearly laid out. $100,000 is a discipline milestone. It's the one you build on willpower and habit. Returns are real but modest. What you're actually earning here is the compound interest engine itself. You're building it, priming it, giving it mass. The hard work is yours. The reward is what comes next. $500,000 is the security milestone. Your money is now generating meaningful passive income. A job loss becomes manageable instead of catastrophic. Your relationship with financial risk changes. You carry yourself differently because you're no longer operating from a place of scarcity. $1 million is the acceleration milestone. Nearly 80% of what you've built came from mathematics, not from your labor. Your portfolio generates more per month in returns than most people take home in a paycheck. The options available to you multiply. And the engine, if you don't shut it off, is now running faster than it ever has. None of this requires exceptional income. None of it requires timing the market perfectly or taking risks most people aren't comfortable with. It requires understanding what money actually does when it's given time, and then having the patience to let it do exactly that. That's the thing about wealth that took me years inside the industry to fully appreciate. It's not complicated, it's just slow at first. And the people who accept that, who don't need the process to be fast or exciting in the early years, those are the ones who eventually look up and realize the math has done something remarkable on their behalf. If this kind of perspective is useful to you, subscribe and share it with someone who's still waiting for the right moment to start. That subscription costs you nothing, but it keeps this kind of content coming. I'm Jonathan. I'll see you in the next one.